Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Stealth Hitch rack receiver on a 2016 BMW X5 M. Now this is going to allow you to have your cargo carriers and bike racks loaded up. If you do plan on ever pulling a trailer, you cannot put a ball mount in here, and also you're going to need to pick up wiring. So if you do plan on pulling that trailer, you can pick up the tow kit, which will allow you to have that, as well as the wiring, and then you'll be able to tow. Now this is what our hitch looks like when it's installed, and you may say, well, where is it? And that's why it lives up to the name Stealth Hitch. It lives underneath here, and that's great for something especially like this X5 M, because this is a sporty vehicle, but it still has usability if you're trying to get your bike rack or cargo carrier or even pull a trailer without taking away from any of the aesthetics of the vehicle. Now the basic rack receiver kit is going to have this attachable 2-inch receiver tube, and that way when you're ready to load up your cargo carrier bike racks, you can just simply twist the handle back, pop this in place, and then you're able to load up your accessories. You can even lock this, and that way no one can walk away with your receiver tube opening. Now this is rated with a 600-pound tongue weight, and when it comes to cargo carriers or bike racks, that's a decent amount of weight, so you'll be able to take your accessories around whenever you need to. Now when you are putting your accessories in place, you will need a 5/8 pin and clip, as it does not come with one. A lot of your accessories when you pick them up will come with one, but if you want a locking version, that way you can leave your accessories on here, lock it in place, and that way no one's going to walk away with them. We have plenty of options available here at eTrailer. Now something to also consider, some of your accessories are going to be in a folding position if you want to stow them that way, and you're going to want to make sure that you have clearance. But the great part is this pin and clip hole is actually further out than the fascia, so you should be fine there. But as far as ground clearance, you are going to have about 14 inches here, which is a pretty decent amount. You should be able to have accessories that are definitely going to have clearance, but something to keep in mind is as you go up inclines, those are going to want to tilt down a little bit, so just keep that in mind when going up inclines. Now when you are done, you'll just twist that handle and this will pop out. Now if you don't plan on using accessories all that much and you kind of just want your clean look but still protect your hitch, you do get this rubber cap that comes with it. So this is just going to keep any of that road grime or water out of here, and that way when you are ready to use your hitch, you can simply pop this out and then it's going to be nice and clean, allowing you to get your receiver or your ball mount in place. Now that also continues on for where the key slot is, that has a rubber cap on it, so again that's going to be protected, keeping your hitch in good condition. Now, as far as installation goes, this one might be a little bit more involved than a typical hitch, and mainly because it replaces the bumper beam. So the fascia does have to come off, and that does require taking taillights out, which seems like a daunting task, but overall it's really not too bad. I'd set aside probably about 4 hours. If you're a little bit handier, you could probably do it faster, but you're going to want to have a spot to put your fascia in a nice safe place, and then the rest of it really is just kind of bolting it in. So let's take a look at the installation so you can get yours installed. To get your hitch installed, we're going to start by opening up our rear hatch, and we're going to pull out these panels, and that way we can gain access to the nuts that are holding on the taillights, as we'll need to remove those for our fascia. So to get these out, pretty easy. We'll do this on both sides, and that's going to give us access to the 8mm nuts holding the taillight on. They're going to be a little bit tricky to see, but go ahead and grab your socket. So before we take our nuts off, we are going to separate the taillight plug. So just kind of push in on this tab and get that to separate. And then our 8mm are right here. Now, if you want, you can pull back this insulation. Make sure you don't drop these because they are pretty small. And so we'll go ahead and get these removed. And throughout the process, anything that we remove, I would want to make sure that you have a nice organized spot to have all this. That way reinstallation goes a lot easier. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Now to get our taillight out, we can kind of wiggle this back and forth. Sometimes it does take some prying, but you're going to want to make sure that you don't crack your taillight or damage your paint. So using a plastic trim tool is definitely helpful. Something else that I kind of do to help this along is those studs that we took the nuts off from previous. You can kind of push on that to kind of give it a little bit forward movement. So just take your time here, and we'll go ahead and get both the taillights removed. Now we can go ahead and set our taillights aside. Once the taillights are pulled out, you're going to see there's an 8mm screw here, so we'll go ahead and get those removed on both sides. Now here on our wheel wells on the rear side, there's going to be these 3 plastic rivets. Now these, there's replacements that come in the kit, so we'll need to pry these off as there is a screw behind these wheel well liners. So to get these popped off, you can drill out the center. Sometimes that works, I think, a little bit better. Or I'm using a trim panel tool here to just kind of pry on these. And just with a little bit of force, they should pull out pretty easily. So go ahead and get those 3 removed, and then you can repeat on the other side. Now the main thing is, even if there's portions left, just as long as that head comes off, that should make it able for us to pry this back. Now there are clips along here. You can probably get these with your hand, but if you need to, you can use a plastic trim tool. Kind of just work your way up slowly here. So I am going to end up using my trim panel tool to just kind of wedge here. And we'll start at the bottom and get our first clip. Now you're going to be using a trim panel tool quite a bit on this installation, so if you're going to want to pick one up just to make sure you don't scuff anything, we do have these available here at eTrailer, and they're really nice to have for any interior work or any painted parts, so it might be worth picking up. Now, using my trim panel tool, I kind of pry it in here, and the clip is just kind of being finicky. So just, again, take your time, and you can see here, this is kind of where it pushes in. So if you can wedge that trim panel tool in to kind of push that tab down, that's going to allow you to pry this out. And if you're worried about your paint, you can put a little painter's tape on the edges where you're prying. The plastic tools are pretty good about not scratching. So we'll just go ahead and continue going up. It should be a little bit easier now that we have the one. And we're just going up far enough to gain access to our 8mm screw that's here. You don't want to pry too hard on these because it can damage the paint, and once you crease this, it's not really going to be able to be salvaged, and you don't want to damage your vehicle while getting your hitch on. So what I'll do now is take my 8mm socket and get this removed. And just to help us on the eventual removal of the fascia, if you have some paper towels or a rag or something that you can kind of just wedge in this top part just to give us that clearance so we can move the fascia out. Move this up. You can see there's another clip up there. But just kind of have this like that. And then what we're also going to do is put some painter's tape on the edge of the fascia. That way, as we're putting the fascia on and removing it, as these rub against each other, this will help protect it. Now with that taped up, we're just going to go ahead and repeat the exact same steps on the other side. Now if you're following along with the instructions as well as this video, being that this is an M model, you do have that sport bumper, so it is a little bit different. And the reflectors are definitely one of the first things you'll notice. Now, on a lot of the BMWs, you will need to remove those. I'm not 100% sure yet if we have to. I don't think we do, but if we will, I'll show you that. Now, we will be removing the screws on the bottom. So we're just going to kind of go along this outside edge. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll get those removed with an 8mm. Now we're going to get ready to pull our fascia off. Now a few things, you're going to want an extra set of hands because the bumper is going to get pretty cumbersome, and you're also going to want to work from the outside in and have a place set up. Now something else, you're probably going to have some electrical components attached to it, so don't just pull the bumper off. You're going to want to have someone support that while separating them. So as we kind of pry on the outside here, we should get these plastic clips to start popping off. And these plastic clips, you're just going to want to kind of push down on those tabs. And as you have pressure along as you go, just pry in here and slowly pull. We should get it to separate fairly easily. Now there are some tabs along here kind of underneath our little tailgate, so you will need to pry those. They recommend using an Allen key to kind of pry them to get these to pop out. I don't think we're going to have an issue here, so we're going to just kind of slowly pull on our fascia and see if we can't get it to separate. And there's also clips along this inside edge. So I actually ran some painter's tape between the tailgate here and the fascia. That way, as we're prying again, we just don't want to have paint-to-paint contact. Now on our passenger side, we do have a wire that's going to be attached to our fascia, so I'm going to separate this. Tab is on the top here, so we're just going to press that and separate this plug. There we go. Now we can set our fascia aside somewhere safe. So we need to remove our fascia support. It's just going to be this plastic piece here, and there is probably going to be wiring attached to it that can stay plugged in. We're just going to have this tucked off to the side, and that's going to allow us to get our bumper beam off. And it's just going to be a series of 10mm nuts here. It looks like on our driver's side here we have 4 of them, so we'll go ahead and get those removed. You'll see the plastic part kind of snaps into this center support, so you can just kind of pop that out. A little tab that you might be able to reach on the bottom to push up. There we go. So you can see where that clips in. And this should just kind of pull out from the studs. And again, we can leave this attached, so if you want to, you can zip tie this up so it's not putting stress on the wire. And that way it's just out of the way. And then we're going to just repeat on the other side of the vehicle. Now we're going to go on our passenger side of our bumper beam, and you'll see that there's a plastic push pin that's holding our wire harness in. So we'll just pry this out, as this will be, well, our beam is going to be removed, so we want to make sure that we don't have this attached. There's also these plastic caps potentially on your top studs, and then you can just go ahead and get these unthreaded. You just kind of go onto these little edges here. Now we are going to be trimming these, so keep these handy, and I'll show you where we're going to trim them. So just like going to the barber shop, just a little off the top here, about 1/4 of an inch is going to allow for these to go back into place when we have our hitch installed, because that hitch is going to be sitting right where that bumper beam was, so we need to notch off just a bit. So if you have a Dremel, is going to work fine. I use an oscillating tool or a multi-tool. They're really handy. Whatever method you have to get that little bit taken off, I'll go ahead and do that now. Now we can remove our bumper beam. It's going to be 4 18mm nuts on both sides of the bumper beam. Now hold on to that hardware, we're going to be using that, but the bumper beam we will not be using. So you can discard that, you can save it for whatever reason, but it's not going back on the vehicle today. So with those nuts taken off, we should be able to get our bumper beam taken off here. Now you may notice there is kind of a gasket material. It may stick to the bumper beam, it may stick onto the fascia. We are going to leave this on here. It's going to create a nice watertight seal between the hitch and the frame of the vehicle. Now before we get our hitch in place, this same wiring harness that we took off that other bumper beam, it's on this little clip here. So to give us a little bit more space to be able to get our hitch in place, we're going to temporarily move that down. We're then going to slide our hitch up. And then we'll grab those nuts that we just took off and get these hand tightened down and come back with our torque wrench. Torque wrench settings are going to be found in the instruction manual, and if you need a torque wrench, we sell these here at eTrailer. You can also go to an auto parts store and generally rent them for free, but we're going to go through, make sure that they're all torqued down properly. That way it's not too tight, causing stress on our studs, but also it's not going to be loose over time when using our hitch. With everything torqued down, we can go ahead and get our fascia bumper supports back in place. So we'll just snap this in and get those 10mm put back on, and we'll repeat on both sides. You can also go ahead and get our plastic caps put back on our studs. And we're going to get ready to put our receiver block and mount it up. But you are going to want to take that rubber plug out because your keys are going to be located in there. There's going to be a 5-digit number that's stamped on there. And in your instruction manual, you're going to see this sheet here, which will show you how to operate it, but also they have a key code here. That way, if you ever lose your key, you're going to have this as a reference and you can get replacements made. Now, depending if you're doing just the rack receiver kit or the towing package, it is going to be slightly different as far as bolting up our receiver. If it's just the rack receiver kit for your cargo carriers and bike racks, it's going to go just in place with your bolts going through here. But ours is going to be a little bit different because we have the towing package. We are going to need to put our safety chain loops in place, as well as our bracket for our wiring. So the way this works, you're going to want these safety chains kind of facing back here, and the handle you're going to want to slide kind of in place. You may kind of have to maneuver it around to get that to slide in. And then we'll just put our receiver block in, and as long as you have the passenger side towards this turn knob here in place, then we can get the rest of it in. So just slide this through, make sure it goes through the block. We'll go ahead and do the same for this side. And then we're going to follow it up. So, just make sure you have the proper orientation of your safety chain loops on this one. And then because we need to have a bracket for our wiring, we also have this L bracket. So this is going to go on one of our studs here, and then we're going to follow it up with our nylon lock nuts. So our L bracket goes on this back one here, and we're going to just make sure that it's kind of squared up because our bracket's going to allow our wiring to face down, making it easier for us to plug in. So I'm going to kind of just get this snugged up, and then we're going to be coming back with our torque wrench, and you are going to need a wrench on the other side. I always recommend using the torque wrench on the nut side. It's going to torque it down a little better. So go through, use that torque setting, and get these tightened up. Again, just make sure your bracket's sitting kind of squared up here. Now, just a little tip here, it's going to want to spin as you torque this down. So to keep it in place, I'm just using an extension to kind of create a little spacer here to hold this in. And the wrench on the other side is wedged, so all I have to do here is hold and torque down. So with this in place, we should be able to get this bracket nice and squared up and still torque down. We can go ahead, get all of our interior put back. Again, good time to zip tie up any wires and make it nice and clean. And then as far as the fascia goes, it really does go on in the reverse order. And then when we get to that rivet point, I'll show you how to do that. Now, don't forget to plug your fascia back in before getting it all snapped into place. And you are going to probably have to have the hatch kind of at a 45 to be able to get those clips to snap in. So just having an extra set of hands handy is going to make it a lot easier. Now, don't forget to put your 8mm screws back in the side. You're going to line your tabs up and just kind of push this in. And once popped in, we should have everything aligned as far as our fender liner and our wheel well arch to our fascia. Now, these are going to be just a push pin style. So if you need to, you can fit just the bottom portion in, just slide those, and then once you press these in, it's going to widen out and hold that in place. And sometimes these can be a little bit tricky. What I recommend, you can grab something that's decently flat and hard and use that to press these in, and they should pop in pretty simply. So by hand, I was able to get about that far in this one, so just using a ratchet that I have here, I'm just going to push square on it. It should open up. Might take a little bit of pressure. There we go. Once that's popped in, we'll just go ahead and repeat for the remainder of them. So now that everything's back in place, all we have to do is pull off the rubber cap on the driver's side, put our key in, and that should unlock our latch. So it is spring loaded, so once it's unlocked, that's going to extend out, and you'll be able to just twist the handle back until it locks. You can then take your ball mount or your receiver and just kind of slide this up in there. And then just push straight up. And once you kind of hear that pop in place, that handle should click in, and then you can go ahead, push that key in, twist it, lock it in place, and then you're ready to go. And that was a look at the Stealth Hitch rack receiver on a 2016 BMW X5 M.